Do we even know who is this 4chan person or website?
How would I even describe 4chan as a website? Probably my second most used site behind YouTube. I've been using it for like a decade and a half, and I've had a lot of good times there. So let's just start with some basic history. Futaba Channel, or as I'll call it 2chan, is a Japanese image board made in 2001. Please note, there is a website called 2channel. 2chan and 2channel are completely different websites. 2channel, often abbreviated to 2ch, was made back in 1999. The site we're most interested in is 2chan, the site made in 2001. 2chan had both image boards and text boards. A text board is what it says on the tin. An OP makes a post, and then people can reply to the thread if they desire. Image boards are the same thing, but you have the ability to use images in your posts, and generally you have to begin the thread with an image. The boards are divided into topics like this, as you can see, and posts are made anonymously without logging into anything. Now then came a guy named Christopher Poole, who went by the name Moot in all lowercase letters. He was a something awful forum user who utilized the source code of 2chan to make an English language version. He called it 4chan. He stayed on as the admin and owner of the site until 2015, then he handed it over to Hiroyuki Nishimura. Hiroyuki owns 4chan to this day. Interestingly enough, Hiroyuki actually founded 2channel, that other website, not the one that 4chan was based off of, which is 2chan. Hiroyuki owned 2channel, so you can see why some people would get even extra confused about that to this day. An important thing to note about 4chan and its effect on the internet is that it's actually kind of a low-traffic site compared to most of the other ones on this tier. Let's take a look. As of recording, it's only number 233 in my country and number 424 in the world. Now that might sound really high, but compared to the other sites, which are usually like in the top 100, this is peanuts in comparison. Despite this, its impact on the internet has been immense. It wouldn't even be an exaggeration to say it's in the top 5 most influential websites of all time. It's that impactful. Because of its completely anonymous nature and lacks rules on censorship, memes and other such ideas can spread more or less unhindered, unlike the highly moderated state of the internet, especially these days. To very briefly summarize how posting on 4chan works, you first gotta pick your board, like on 2chan. I'll show you the list of 4chan boards. Threads are organized into 10 pages from most recently posted in at the top of page 1 to the one with the last post made a long time ago at the end of page 10. If someone makes a new thread and there's no more room for your old dead thread at the end of page 10, it'll get bumped off and it will be archived on a third-party archive website. If you'd like to save your favorite thread from this fate, what you need to do is you need to post in it, and then that'll bump it to the top of page 1. We call that bumping. But you can't just bump forever. There is what's called a bump limit on every board. It's a little different on each board, but that's the maximum amount of posts that you can make into a thread, and then it'll stop bumping. You could still post in it, but it won't bump it to the top anymore. It can still die even if people are actively posting there once it hits the bump limit. What I just said was extremely basic and only took about a minute and a half, but for some reason, our news media seemingly can't do any basic research on 4chan before they make news stories, and they're pretty infamous for how awful their news coverage of 4chan is. Let me show you some of the more notorious and honestly hilarious ones.
Bump means...
Bump is referring to cocaine.
Remember, bumping means bringing the thread back to page 1, but she says it means cocaine? What is she doing? Is she on cocaine, maybe? Here's another infamous one.
I believe they're domestic terrorists.
Their name comes from their secret websites. It requires anyone posting on the site to remain anonymous.
That fan exploding moment is kind of iconic because of how dramatic it is and how unrelated it is to what they're talking about. They just randomly threw in a van exploding while talking about 4chan. And also, the fact that the person manually typed out anonymous as the name is funny, because remember, in 4chan posting, you're always anonymous unless you specifically type out a name. So they're manually typing in the thing that would have been their default name. Honestly, this is hilarious. But now I present to you the most famous one.
Do we even know who is this 4chan person or website.
He may, and I'm sure we're gonna be able to get some more confirmation on this as the hours and minutes go on. He may have been just a system administrator who knew his way around and how to hack things.
This one boggles my mind. They couldn't do a single Google search to find that 4chan is a website? This is a news broadcasting agency. These are newscasters, supposed to be professionals. What the heck is this? Well, anyway, this one segues into a pretty famous 4chan incident that CNN was reporting on. It's typically called the Fappening, but others call it Celebgate. There's going to be a later entry covering this, but to give like a one-sentence summary, in 2014, nude images of celebrities were leaked on 4chan, which then spread to the rest of the internet, and I'll leave it at that till the entry. Now to open up Pandora's box, that is 4chan memes and trends. If you want an easy-to-digest time capsule of what really early 4chan was like, I would suggest this video by NCH Productions that I'll link in the description, or this by Zonesama? That's a name I haven't heard in a while. If you put a caret in front of text on 4chan, it turns the text green and it's meant to be a quote function, but people tend to use it as a way to tell stories, and so green text stories became a big trend and that spread all across the internet. On 4chan, every time you post, you get a post number. If you get post numbers that are the same, like ending in 22, those are called dubs. Getting 222 would be trips. Getting 2222 would be quads, etc. People, especially a while ago, would tend to notice these and be happy for what they would call a get. Patrick Bateman from American Psycho in this specific position pointing is very popular for when you get a good get. He's so infamous, some people call him Dubs Guy. People would say something like, doubles, check 'em. There are a lot of notable gets in 4chan's history, but I like this one where my Oshi Akai Hato, otherwise known as Hachima, gets a full set of 8s as her post number. Now 8 is pronounced Hachi or just Ha when read in kanji shortenings, so Hachima and the number 8 are inseparable, so that's a really nice get for her. Now there are a ton of memes that either started or got popularized on 4chan. Just some are going to be talked about later, but I'll give a few examples. Advice Animals, Rage Comics, Lolcats, Pedo Bear, Yo Dog, Rick Rolling, The Rules of the Internet, the terms copypasta and creepypasta, and many other early ones. Heck, the whole brony subculture was named and popularized here. Another thing people tend to think about is Anonymous, the pseudo-organized hacker group and their antics against internet censorship, corruption, and Scientology. Now, pretty much they're a joke these days and nobody on 4chan thinks or cares about them all that much, but back in the day, they were an important part of the culture. But there's an entry about them later. Back in the day, the random board called B was almost synonymous with 4chan itself. There was even a research paper of this time that MIT published in 2011 called 4chan and B, an analysis of anonymity and ephemerality in a large online community, which I'll link in the description, which I hope illustrates how much 4chan was known for B back then. A notable, really recent event was the 4chan hack in April of 2025, in which it was shut down for 11 days or so. Definitely the worst outage 4chan has ever seen, and it affected some boards' population levels, including my main board, the VTuber board known as VT, still to this day. Not because 4chan lost popularity or because VTubing went down or anything like that, but because an alternative site, holotower.org, which was used during the hack by HoloLive fans, which is the largest user base on VT, and many users just decided to stay even when 4chan came back. But it's not just VT, there is a general sentiment that you can feel that 4chan feels a lot slower these days, and a lot of people view it on its decline because of this hack, but we'll see. 4chan has been through a lot. I have a lot more to say on this entry, but I really do need to cut this short. I've already cut 10 minutes off of this entry as it is, and it's already a pretty long entry as it is, but 4chan and its impact on the internet cannot be overstated. Its anonymous style of posting and its culture have never not been relevant since its founding in 2003. Cringe culture. Cringe, as used online, is when you feel embarrassed by seeing something really weird. Like if you're watching someone do something completely degenerate in public, or just making an ass of themselves in front of someone who isn't humoring them, the term cringeworthy became being used. to define such behavior. According to this old archive page, the term cringeworthy began from a British comic, The Bash Street Kids, when a character, Cuthbert Cringeworthy, was introduced in 1972. Let's speedrun some of this history here. In 2004, this forum post on killermovies.com had a cringeworthy moments list for Lord of the Rings. In 2005, Daily Mail had an article about the top 10 most cringeworthy films, but they seemingly deleted this article, and I could still find it on their sitemap archive though. In 2007, it was defined on Urban Dictionary. In 2009, cringeworthy.net was made, which is where I showed that archive page earlier. In September of 2009, r/cringe was made to document and laugh at such cringeworthy events, and other subreddits were made around the same time, like r/cringepics. In 2010, Cringe Comedy was an article made on TV tropes that documented these types of things. In media, videos of things that make you cringe were around in the 2000s, but started to get really popular in the 2010s. There are entire playlists made up of cringeworthy individuals doing cringeworthy things, so I'll link an unlisted playlist of a few hundred of these kind of videos in the description, but I'll also show you a couple examples of popular ones back then.
Thank you for a good evening.
Alex,
Yes.
come on.
Come on, what?
It's your life. Take a chance.
I'll take a chance when I'm ready. Sorry. I warned ya.
I know.
This next one is probably the most infamous one on places I used to frequent.
We're going shopping! Shopping with money we don't have! Headphones!
It's their amazing 52% off sale on foam. So we're gonna get some. They got the foams. And we're gonna steal it all.
We're gonna try to make it less suspicious somehow. Somehow.
There you go, hide it behind your bag.
It could be my green dress.
Yes.
You'll never know.
Ha
How's it
Oh
look?
yes. Sexy.
Laughing at these cringeworthy videos used to be so popular that I remember on the video game board on 4chan called V used to have cringe threads all the time, and where they pretended it was video game related in the OP post, but then the post had nothing to do with games and they were just wanted to post funny cringeworthy videos. Anyway, the term cringe culture is used to describe the people who engage in making fun of such behaviors. While the internet used to not be able to get enough of these things, the zeitgeist has changed, and I think everybody has really noticed that. These days, it seems like even the idea of laughing at these weird people and behaviors that they decided to make public to the world is considered offensive to certain groups of people. For example, in that infamous foam adventure video that I showed you before, you see the comments of it if you sort by new. The comments seem to be supporting and even defending this, whereas the popular comments are just doing what the internet used to do by laughing at these cringe behaviors. So there's a disconnect between what used to be funny versus what things are like now. If anything, you'd probably get shat on by certain groups of people by even calling something cringe or cringeworthy. The internet's a very different place these days. So in any case, it's died down a lot, cringe culture has, but it still exists to an extent. Genshin Impact / miHoYo. We're gonna get into this part right away, but first, please make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that bell icon to be alerted of when the next part comes out. There's gonna be a lot of parts in this series, so you're gonna wanna know right when it comes out, and hitting that bell icon will let you do that. And I do have a page at buymeacoffee.com/deepdiveotaku. Link is in the description. If you'd like to support the channel, consider contributing on that page. Any support would be appreciated, and anybody who supports will get a shout out in the next video. Alright, now let's get started. miHoYo is a Chinese company that has made a lot of popular gacha games like Zenless Zone Zero, the Honkai series, and their most popular one, Genshin Impact. Genshin Impact was released in 2020 and is one of the most well-known gacha games ever made. Now there are some controversies with Genshin Impact, other than the typical ones like being subject to the CCP and general gacha controversies. There was a recent lawsuit by the FTC in which miHoYo had to settle. It was only for a paltry sum of $20 million when the game raked in over $6 billion since 2020, which probably barely felt like a drop in the bucket. But it was over misleading players on winning odds and over what the government viewed as advertising to children and the data they collected on children. So on top of the $20 million they had to spend, they also had to change their data collection policy on minors. But getting away from controversies, the game was basically everywhere online. Now you probably remember one of the lolly characters, since these tended to be posted the most, with Paimon especially being posted a lot. Now if you want to see how big this game was, you have to see how many collaborations it's done with companies. Let's take a look at this list here. They've had collaborations with Cadillac, Domino's, Douyin, which is Chinese TikTok. They've had collaborations with McDonald's, Duolingo, etc. So with that, on top of the $6 billion it's made just from Genshin Impact, it seems like miHoYo's doing pretty well for itself. But what about the game itself? It seems to be an open-world action RPG. You control 4 characters in a party who you can switch between in combat. I've seen people compare this game to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild for many of its mechanics in the open world. I'll link a video in the description by Medi333 and a GameSpot article comparing them, so I'll let you be the judge if it's close to Breath of the Wild or not. I'm no gacha game expert, but to me this seems to be a decently high effort one with some interesting gameplay compared to most I see. Grand Theft Auto Online. Grand Theft Auto 5, which I'm going to shorten to GTA 5, released in 2013 and is still the most recent entry in the GTA franchise. Assuming GTA 6 releases this year, that is a 13-year gap between GTA games, which is nuts. In any case, GTA 5 is one of the highest sold games of all time with over 200 million copies sold. Now exact rankings are difficult, but if we go by this Wikipedia list, only really Tetris and Minecraft have outsold it. GTA Online is the online mode for GTA 5. If we just talked about one of East Asia's most profitable gambling simulators packaged as games, then this is the West's equally predatory version, even if it's not quite the same. On top of paying for the base game of GTA 5, there are 2 ways you can spend money on top of that. There's GTA Plus subscriptions, which is a premium monthly subscription which gives in-game bonuses, early access to new content, etc. The other monetization method is the infamous Shark Cards. It's an in-game currency that, while you can grind out in-game, will take forever and you'll be competing with players who actually just spent the money. If recent leaks are to be believed, then GTA Online makes around $8 million a week. That's right, $8 million a week. And has surpassed the $5 billion lifetime dollar amount, which is insane. And keep in mind, this is all on top of the actual sales of GTA 5 itself, which sold over 200 million copies, which translates to a heck of a lot of money for GTA 5. With numbers like that, I can see why GTA 6 is taking so long. Why would you make a new game when they can milk the shit out of this 13-year-old game and still make billions? Now that I've talked about the unholy amounts of money they've extracted from your pocket, let's talk about the game itself. To Rockstar's credit, they have provided multiple updates each year. Just take a look at this timeline here. As for what you'll be doing in the game, I'll just quote from this directly. Players control a customizable silent protagonist in their journey to become a powerful criminal, slowly building an empire as they complete tasks from various NPCs, many of them returning from the single-player mode. From what I've seen, GTA Online looks like GTA 5 gameplay, but with wacky outfits, weapons, vehicles, and obviously online multiplayer capabilities. GTA Online has a very large content creation sphere around it. Honestly, every game on this tier does, but GTA Online is one of the larger ones in this respect. One example of an interesting bit of content fans made are GTA Online roleplay or RP servers in which you, with your actions and voice chat, properly act in character for whatever your character is. Usually like an actual job like a police officer or something simple like a baker. Now for my shameless Hololive mentions. Hololive held an RP server in GTA Online in 2024, which made waves online and even got articles written about it in English. While the event was in Japanese, there are plenty of moments that an English speaker would be able to watch. For example, someone based as fuck who probably looks like this in real life made a compilation of all the participants' POVs from day one into about an 8-hour and 20-minute video that I'll link in the description. Sadly, he didn't do the other days because this burnt him out, but hey, I respect the hustle even to do it for one day. If I had to recommend any moments in particular, it would be of the VTuber duo Fuamoko. Their antics as the most incompetent and cute paramedics are a sight to be seen. With incidents like injured people getting flown out of the car because they weren't careful or running over injured people, it's a really fun experience. I mean, especially when the other VTuber, Fubuki, who was the hospital director in the RP, scolds them. I'll link a clip compilation of it if you're curious. One other noteworthy experience is from Fubuki as well as the VTubers Korone, Okayu, and Kanata. It becomes like a soap opera with a pretty hilarious ending in which one of them gets shot at a wedding. Here's a clip compilation of that arc, which is also in the description. Anyway, GTA Online, despite its monetization efforts, has a lot of variety and fun to be had, and has a big content creation scene. Call of Duty. Call of Duty, or COD, is an FPS series focusing on the military and began in 2003. Call of Duty to Call of Duty 2 took 2 years to make, but every release after has been the year after. This is a yearly franchise, which is pretty nuts. But they do tend to rotate between the dev teams each time. The publisher is Activision, but there are 4 game dev teams currently. Infinity Ward from 2003 on, Treyarch from 2005 on, Sledgehammer Games from 2011 on, and Raven Software from 2015 on. Sometimes teams work together on games, but usually they just rotate. There are also non-mainline spin-offs which push the amount of games up even more so, and the amount of dev teams. COD usually comes with a single-player campaign, but most of the fans play it for the online multiplayer. One thing you may notice about this franchise is that the earlier games were about real wars and a bit more realistic, whereas that's not really the case these days. Another thing I've noticed that people say a lot is that if you go from the first game to Modern Warfare 2, the 2009 version, there was a near consistent improvement of the franchise, and this is where the series peaked, and it went downhill from here. But don't take my word for it, as I've never really played this franchise. I played it once with my uncle a long time ago when Call of Duty 3 came out, but that's about it for my experience with it. Now this franchise has spawned some pretty big memes, the most infamous one being the press F to pay respects that you still see to this day posted everywhere, and this came from Call of Duty Advanced Warfare. There's also the ghost staring meme.
Kids, guns, and balloons. There's a new one.
This one comes from Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, not the 2009 version, the 2022 version. My favorite Call of Duty meme comes from Modern Warfare 2, the 2009 version, in an online match. Let me play it here.
Oh my god! Oh! Oh my fucking god! Oh! Oh! No, get the camera! Money! Money! Oh my god!
This was also the franchise that spawned the infamous Major League Gaming, or MLG, which will be talked about in a later entry. Overall, Call of Duty is one of those franchises that just keeps on chugging and keeps on chugging and doesn't really seem to be anywhere close to ending, so we'll see how it goes in the future. Emojis. Emojis are these little pictures you see when you want to put a reaction or image in your text without actually attaching an image. The term emoji actually comes from Japan in the late 1980s and 1990s and comes from the Japanese words for picture and character and actually originally meant pictograph. If you smush the words for picture and character in Japanese together, you get emoji. So this term has no connection to any English word itself and is a loan word. Now, different services make their emojis look different. For example, here's an interesting website called Emojipedia, where you can compare various companies' emojis by going to the left, clicking vendors and platforms. Now, sometimes emojis end up being used in contexts that are definitely different than intended, like this loudly crying face emoji or this angry symbol emoji. Some people remember there being a burglar emoji, but this is an example of the Mandela effect, where there's mass misremembering of something. Emojis are everywhere on the internet. They're not really my thing, but I see them everywhere, and so I'm sure all of you have seen plenty of them. Let's move on. Hulu. Hulu is a streaming service kind of like Netflix. I remember when I first heard of Hulu, I thought it was Netflix's dumb little brother until I realized just how many of these services would pop up. Now, Disney bought Hulu and decided to integrate Hulu into their Disney Plus library, which is a different streaming service. Now, in 2025, Disney announced that they wanted to eventually discontinue the Hulu app in favor of a shared platform with Disney Plus, while keeping two different subscriptions, of course. Let's move on to the next entry. Buzzfeed. Founded in 2006, this is one of those companies that's difficult to neatly summarize. Buzzfeed is an online company of many hats. On one hand, they are essentially one of the biggest slop producers on the internet with super low quality quizzes and awful clickbait, horrible tabloid junk they call articles, but at the same time they can create a series like BuzzFeed Unsolved, which I'm told is one of the shows that is really actually pretty good, or at least used to be. They used to have a separate news source called BuzzFeed News. It's generally seen as better than the dumpster fire of their normal site's articles, but that doesn't mean it was great, and it was shut down in 2023. In 2021, BuzzFeed purchased the Huffington Post, or just HuffPost, and that's what replaced BuzzFeed News. On top of the quizzes, the tabloid articles, HuffPost, and various video series, they've also done a few podcasts and have even made 17 movies in 5 years. Most of them don't seem to be any good. In summary, BuzzFeed is a content mill shoving slop down people's throats, but have occasionally made some things that people like mixed in there. Fake news. Fake news is when misinformation/disinformation is peddled as if it was true news. However, fake news is generally a loaded term because its usage is generally a pretty politicized one. I don't really have much to say that wouldn't be biased, so I'll just leave it at that. Hashtags. The number sign, or the pound sign, is most frequently called a hashtag in the modern day. I explained what hashtags do in the Twitter entry, but essentially it's when you want to talk about a certain topic in a tweet or some other social media's form of post, and you want your post to be organized in that topic of posts. The idea of hashtags was first proposed in this tweet, and apparently this is the first recorded instance of the term hashtag. Other sites like Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube have them now. There will be entries about individually interesting hashtags, so let's just leave it like that for now and move on. Cyberbullying. Cyberbullying is bullying, but online. Many definitions of cyberbullying seem to emphasize how much it's happening to kids and teens, but isn't that how most bullying is in general? Sure, it exists for adults, but isn't it more frequent for kids in school to be bullied than any other age group? How is cyberbullying any different? In any case, cyberbullying is definitely an issue, as having nobody directly in front of you can embolden you to be bolder in your bullying. And with how interconnected the internet is, you can bully people all the way across the world, not just people who are around you, which makes it even worse. I've noticed that in real-life bullying at schools, teachers and principals either literally do nothing when you bring it to them, or they help a teeny tiny bit, or honestly, it could just make it worse. And you still have to be around your bullies, even if they try to do something about it, you're still around them most of the time. But with the internet, it should be easier to deal with cyberbullying by following these legendary words from Tyler the Creator. Ha 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 ha, how the fuck is cyberbullying real? Ha 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 ha. Nigga. Just walk away from the screen like, nigga. Close your eyes, ha ha. When dealing with completely random people online, this can be pretty sage advice. Now, many victims of cyberbullying online need to really learn to stop oversharing online and learn how to log off. Now, that's not me blaming them, they don't deserve to be bullied for it. However, cyberbullies don't really care about what you deserve, they care about making fun of you because they're having a laugh out of it. If you end up not giving them the time of day, they'll probably just get bored and leave you alone. That's the kind of thing Tyler the Creator was saying. But dealing with people you know in real life who are cyberbullying you, this advice would fall flat since I presume you wouldn't be able to escape them in real life either, especially if you're a kid in school. My suggestion, if you're being cyberbullied and ignoring it doesn't seem to be doing much, I would screen cap everything that the cyberbully is sending to you. Screen cap it, archive it, whatever. Make sure you have a record of it. I would start reporting them on whatever website it's on, and if that isn't doing anything and it gets really, really bad, you may even want to report it to your local authorities, and since you saved records of it, they can't really delete that from you, can they? So you'd have evidence for the police if they were going to do anything about it. Sadly, it seems like cyberbullying isn't going anywhere anytime soon, and I hope if anybody is getting cyberbullied and watching this, hopefully they find solace in the fact that there are resources out there, and hopefully it ends soon. Twitch. Twitch is a live streaming service, and Amazon owns it these days. Twitch does focus on game streaming, but there has been a lot of people doing IRL streams that do not feature playing games at all. On Twitch, following is the equivalent to subscribing on YouTube, and subscribing on Twitch is equivalent to becoming a member on YouTube, which financially supports the streamer for some perks like extra custom emotes, stuff like that. Subbing on Twitch has different membership tiers that gives you more perks the higher up you go, and you can even gift subs to people there. There is also a so-called Twitch Prime sub, in which you get one free Twitch sub as a member of Amazon Prime each month. You can usually donate directly to the streamer by using an external service, or you can use the built-in bits feature on Twitch, which is called cheering. There is also a thing called a hype train that you can read more about here, linked in the description. But basically a hype train starts when somebody gets a certain amount of support in a certain time period, and then can be continued and even increase in intensity the more people support. Twitch also has many different non-money related features, such as rating creators when you're ending a stream, which just means you're automatically redirecting members of the chat to that stream. And then there's channel points, which are just points a viewer earns by either donating or participating actively in a stream. And those said points can be redeemed for a number of creative things. Typically, it can make a visual thing happen on screen, or a sound effect, or get the streamer to do specific things. Another thing viewers can do is called clipping, which is just taking a moment from a stream and saving it on the site, which is pretty useful. While Twitch does have a lot of features, it isn't perfect. Like, actually storing your streams on Twitch has actually been less straightforward than a place like YouTube. I'll link an article about it here and in the description, but to summarize, it is limited and also depends on your place in the Twitch pecking order. Smaller creators get less storage space than bigger streamers. This isn't the case on YouTube, for example, since on YouTube you can stream for up to 12 hours straight, and then that whole entire stream will be saved on your YouTube channel unless you manually delete it, and you can do this every day, all the time. But to be fair to Twitch, Google is an infinite money pit and can afford to let YouTube streams stay forever, no matter the amount of streams. And heck, many of YouTube's streaming features are copied, or inspired by Twitch. So even if I greatly prefer YouTube myself, I can see why people would prefer Twitch. One thing that's a bit less identifiable is that there's an underlying Twitch culture that some people like and some people don't like. I've never been a fan, but I know others are. Another thing that Twitch has a lot of is esports broadcasts. Ones like ESL, League World Championship, Dota 2's Championships, Rocket League's Championships, Fortnite's Championships, NBA 2K's Championships, etc. I would also be remiss as to not at least mention that there's an event each year called TwitchCon, which is a convention all about Twitch creators that has events both in North America and in Europe. In other words, Twitch is a very popular choice to create and watch live streams on in the West. Stan culture. This is just one of those terms that came up out of the blue to me that I saw like a few years ago and then I suddenly started seeing everywhere. I'm honestly shocked the term was coined in the year 2000, but hey, apparently it was. So the rapper Eminem made a song called Stan that's about an obsessed fan. Later on, in 2006, it was defined by the Urban Dictionary, so somebody must have been using it back then. However, the definition has greatly shifted since then. It seems to have meant an overly zealous fan in a negative light back then. But these days it still means a really devoted fan, but it's more used by said devoted fans, not as an insult, but as a point of pride. Here, let me show a bit of nuance, just so you understand what I mean. Let's say we're talking about a Taylor Swift fan, right? A Swiftie. The original definition seems to imply you'd say something like, "That dude's a stan," as an insult when someone's being overly into her. But nowadays it would be used like this. "Hey, do you guys like Taylor Swift?" And then someone would respond with, "Taylor Swift? Yeah, we stan her." And this would mean that they affirm that they are really big fans of her. This terminology also seems to be extremely prevalent on Twitter, and one context in which your average person may have even heard of this term comes from K-pop stan, because K-pop fan bases seem to be particularly obsessive, defensive, and fierce. Spotify. Spotify is a Swedish music streaming company that is one of those groundbreaking services that disrupts an entire industry. While Spotify is not the first, it is the biggest and the one that succeeded the most. Think of it like this. Spotify is to music as Netflix is for movies and TV shows. And like Netflix, where you didn't need to buy an individual movie or individual seasons of shows to watch them, you no longer needed to spend $15 for a single album on CD anymore, or feel the need to have to pirate. With Spotify, you get a metric fuck ton of music, either for free with ads, or ad-free with a monthly subscription that's equivalent to the cost of one single album. It's a pretty great value, honestly. Also, like Netflix, competitors have crept up like Apple Music, YouTube Music, Amazon Music, Tidal, Deezer, etc. However, I would argue that Spotify's music catalog hasn't really suffered nearly as much as Netflix's did. I mean, it isn't a perfect catalog for sure, but it's vast nonetheless. Now, Spotify is more than just music, actually. It's also pushed into the podcasting space, but there's an entry for those later in this tier, so I'll save it for later. But I will at least note that in 2020, they bought the rights to the most popular podcast in the world, the Joe Rogan Experience, but there's an entry about Joe Rogan later, so I'll save any more discussion on him for later. By the way, if you're curious with how these musical artists get paid on a platform like this, I'll quote from here. Spotify pays royalties based on the number of artist streams as a proportion of total songs streamed, distributes approximately 70% of its total revenue to rights holders, often record labels, who then pays the artists based on individual agreements. I'm not here to say if that's good or bad, it's just how Spotify does it. Wish. I'm gonna level with you. Wish is one of those e-commerce sites that sells cheap Chinese junk for extremely low prices. Wish became a bit of a meme both for its ridiculously low prices and for the quality of products you got. You used to hear about Wish all the time, but not really these days. If you're interested about hearing more about Wish, I would recommend this video from the channel Company Man, linked in the description, that detailed the rise and fall of this company. Shitposting. Shitposting is one of those terms that I think everybody knows what it means intuitively, and you can point it out when somebody is shitposting, but actually putting it into words is difficult. It's a know it when I see it kind of thing. 4chan's FAQ describes it as knowingly contributing low-quality, off-topic, or ill-intentioned posts. I like this description of it from Daily Dot. The essence of shitposting encompasses content of aggressively, ironically, and trollishly poor quality, incoherent jokes, hasty photoshopping, mashups, irrelevance, errors in spelling or grammar. All are hallmarks of a shitpost. Some other aspects, as described by Know Your Meme, are threadjacking, circle jerking, and non-commercial spamming. I think these three sources explained it really well, so that's why I mentioned them all. As for the word's origins, it's sadly not really all that known. The earliest one that people can know 100% are from this April 2007 post on Something Awful, but it most definitely was used on 4chan before then. How do I know this? Well, it came to me in a dream, right? I just have a gut feeling, is all. I don't have any proof. Regardless of the origin of the word shitposting, it's spread all across the web nonetheless. One of the more iconic uses of the term is from this image and idea that ironic shitposting is still shitposting. There was also the term fun posting that I remember. There isn't much talk about this, but there is this post from the anime and manga board called A in June 2012, and it's cited as the first known instance. But fun posting is really just rebranding the term and making it sound less like shitposting. There are some pretty iconic trends in shitposting, like desu spam. The character Suisei Seki from Rosen Maiden, the anime series, would say desu a lot. Now, desu is a copula, which goes at the end of a statement in Japanese, and in the standard Tokyo dialect, the U is silent, so the normal one would be des instead of desu. But Suisei Seki has a dialect that does pronounce the U at the end. If you want to hear just how often she says desu, I'll link a video in the description that compiles her saying desu 735 times. There was a time when spamming desu in images of her was an extremely common style of shitposting. Another common thing relating to early shitposting was calling the really awful posts cancer or cancerous, especially on 4chan, and a common phrase used to be the cancer that is killing B. But the more common use of the term cancer was in images like this. There are some other notable trends relating to shitposting from the time that I do want to mention, but I'll keep these quick. Interestingly, these both come from Finnish image boards. This first one is Spurto, which is just a poorly drawn rendition of a different meme, Pedo Bear, which is an entry in the later tier. You often see Spurto with text like this, like really awful text. It's very deliberate to try to make it as shitposty as possible. The other Finnish one is Lenny Face, or Lay Lenny Face, which is an emoticon that looks like this, and he was spammed like desu all the time back then. Shitposting is a vast ocean of content, despite how awful it can be, that while there is much more I could talk about, I do need to cut it off eventually. Let's move on. Ride-sharing. Think of Uber or Lyft. That's what ride-sharing is. You use an app or a website to find a driver, and unlike taxis, you don't just hail one off the street. The thing about ride-sharing companies is that they are extremely dependent on where you live compared to most things I've discussed so far, and what I mean by that is, as an American, Uber and Lyft are the ones I know, but a heck of a lot of different countries have their own kind of ride-sharing or have really well-known taxi services instead of relying on ride-sharing. Heck, those differences can happen within your own country. For example, New York City and Las Vegas still have taxis as a common option, for example. But in a lot of other places that don't have taxi services regularly, they use ride-sharing. Now, ride-sharing can actually be pretty controversial based on the way that they treat their employees as contractors instead of employees with benefits, or the less strict licensing done compared to taxi services. Some states in my country, and just some other countries in general, have tried to put stricter requirements on companies like Uber, and they even have dynamic prices, which by itself can be controversial as well. Now these are also companies that seem to be struggling with making a profit, and I remember back when I was in college we did a case study on Uber. Note that this was a long time ago before they were ever profitable, and we were actually debating how long investors would prop up a non-profitable company based on the promises of further growth. But to be on the more positive side, it's been a huge help for whenever you go someplace extremely new, or if you're the type that gets drunk while out and doesn't have a designated driver, or if you don't own a car and it's a long distance away and you don't want to take public transit, etc. Weeaboos. Before I explain the term weeaboo, let's explain the word otaku first. It tends to refer to people with obsessive interests, especially in certain hobbies. The media they consume could be called otaku media, and while it can be anime and manga, it can also be trains, as train otaku are very well known. But this word otaku, when it was loaned into English from Japanese, it came to refer pretty much exclusively to people who are really into Japanese media. There are a large group of people who like Japanese customs, entertainment, people, etc. You would call this Japanophilia, and the idea of a Japanophile has existed for a few hundred years. In the early 2000s, there was this term that started to spread called Wapanese, that described this phenomenon and was a combination of wannabe or white and Japanese. So you would call someone who isn't Japanese but loves Japan Wapanese. In 2003, there was an Urban Dictionary article that defined it. But what about the term weeaboo? Well, in 2005, a webcomic named the Perry Bible Fellowship released this that I'll link in the description. Weeaboo in this comic doesn't actually mean anything and has nothing to do with Japanese culture. It's just a silly made-up term for a joke. But the admin of 4chan, Moot, being the kind of guy he was, decided to add a word filter on 4chan, so when somebody types Wapanese, it turned into weeaboo automatically. This is not by any means unheard of on 4chan and is usually done when Moot, or well nowadays just the mod team, gets sick of seeing a term spammed all the time. I mean, to this day, soy still gets filtered to onions and soy boy gets filtered to based boy. So, like in those cases I just mentioned, Wapanese got filtered to weeaboo. And like many things on the internet, once it becomes a trend on 4chan, it spreads elsewhere. So now, weeaboo is the term some people would use to describe obsessive fans of anime and other such Japanese media, or just fans of it in general. Also, it's often shortened to weeb. So what term do we use? Do we use weeaboo? Do we use Wapanese? Do we use Japanophile? Do we use otaku? Well, what term should we use? Typically, actual fans of these things will say that they are otakus, but some will use the term weeb. Wapanese, though, is a very dated term that hardly sees any use, and Japanophile really isn't also used very much by people who are actually fans. I do want to mention two of the most infamous cases of so-called weebs on the internet that people know about. The first one is Ken-sama. Now, this is one of the most popular copypastas on the internet, but I would strongly recommend watching Wang's video on this as he debunks it and explains where the image comes from. I'll link it in the description, but I mean, obviously this image was bullshit. This copypasta was fake, but still, I would check out that video. The second one is this video, David Kun Loves Japan, and I'll also link in the description. I'll also put the original upload of this video from Nico Nico Doga in the description as well.
とにかく日本のアニメが大好きなデイビッド君。そんな彼に興味津々のたかしとじんちゃんはデイビッド君の部屋に遊びに行くことに。
スリッパ履いた方がええと思うで、デイビッド。足の裏カチカチやで。履いたない。え？それで部屋入るわけやろ。俺がルームメイトですめっちゃ嫌やわ。大喧嘩するわ俺。お前スリッパぐらい履けやと俺言うで。見てこれで上がって見て畳やでしかも。畳やった。絶対喧嘩するわ俺デイビッドのルームメイトじゃなくてよかった。上がっていい？お邪魔します。お邪魔します。広いやん。うわーデイビッド。8畳。これはなかなかやな。こう好きなものに囲まれて紹介していって俺全然分からへんねん僕たち誰この子紹介して
日本橋のメイドおる日本橋のメイド
日本橋のメイドさんにポスターがあんのはい デビット好き。エムルちゃん。
エムルちゃん、私の一番好きなメイド。
これをオタクっていうのは知ってる？
うん、オタク。
もうデイビッドはオタク。
はい。この私のコレクション。
うわー。デイビッドなかなか本気やなこれ。デイビッド、アメリカではこういうのはないのあるの？メイドさんみたいなのいてるの？
ああ、いえ。
こっちで来てハマった。
うん。こっちだけ。
日本好き。
日本大好き。
大好き。
メイドさんのどんな瞬間が好き？
メイドさんは、
絶対友達になられへんわ俺も。すごいねデイビッド。
ありがとう。
ありがとう褒めてない。スタンダード。いいね。ちょっとこれ電話して。かわいいデイビッド。
ありがとう。
あでも似合うわデイビッドは。
似合う。
クール。
あ、
クール。
ありがとう。
彼女は？
彼女いない。
おらへんの？意外あるか。
一人で発見どいてよデイビッドの。
This video was a staple of cringe culture back in the day and most definitely lives up to its reputation on rewatch. It's kinda hard to watch, but that's if you have no context. So the guy in the white shirt is a Japanese comedian, Jinai Tomonori, and he with another guy interview and tease David a bit. However, I would caution that the translation on this video is really awful. I'm talking like the creator inserting stuff that wasn't specifically said to push a message on him being mocked more than he was, and even just general misunderstandings of what was being said. I would strongly suggest reading this 3-part blog response to this video that I'll link all 3 parts in the description. And interestingly, the first 2 parts of this blog were written in 2015, and the third one was in 2025, with the third one being a pretty fascinating read, regardless of whether you find this topic interesting or not. In any case, I'm moving on to a related term. There's a term called ironic weeaboo or ironic weeb, which is often used by people who are into this media to describe a subsection of individuals in these fandoms. You see, as otaku media spread into Western countries, some people's reaction to enjoying this media is not to display it in any way, shape, or form. It's to always display your enjoyment of it with a tinge of irony, satire, and self-deprecation. And on top of this, these kinds of people tend to only consume surface-level media in the otaku space, and when they go anywhere deeper they get disgusted and they don't want anybody to see it, that type of stuff, and will actually shit on actual otakus, kind of like what they're afraid of regular people doing to them, which is why they always have the tinge of irony on them to keep themselves away from people making fun of them, because if I'm making fun of myself, they can't make fun of me. But then they start making fun of actual otakus, which is something else. There's one other adjacent term to all of this that I want to bring up called Weeaboos. This one is pretty much the opposite. Someone from a non-Western country, usually Japan, who really likes Western, but usually American, media or culture or things. Like Ken-sama, there's also this pretty well-known copy pasta, which of course is all made up, but still funny. And this is just the opposite of Ken-sama. It's a Japanese guy who's obsessed with the West. Some people would call Hideo Kojima to be an example of a really successful Weeaboo, since most of his games he makes are all about Westerners, and he uses mostly Western actors, and he also constantly posts photos on his Twitter of burgers. Some really tasty-looking burgers, too. Webcomics. Webcomics are exactly what they sound like, comics posted on the internet. Some famous ones in the West would probably be something like Penny Arcade or XKCD. Probably the most infamous one would be Sonichu, but that's a can of worms for a different entry. On the Japanese side of things, the One Punch Man series is a webcomic adapted into a manga and then adapted into an anime, so there's an example. If you want something cute, I would try Habanero-tan, which is just a moified Pepper's comedic adventures. It's specifically a yonkoma, aka 4-koma, where a page is 4 equal-sized panels that's pretty popular in Japan. An interesting case of webcomics comes from South Korea. You see, in the West, we have things called comics. We call Japanese comics manga, but we call Korean comics manhwa. In South Korea, it's much more common for manhwa to be published online than Japanese manga, as Japanese manga is still to this day mostly actually published in book form. The South Koreans call these webtoons, and there's a few different places to read these, but the main one is webtoon.com. Korean webtoons are pretty optimized for screens instead of books, so the pages are really long and thin. I'm not really a fan of it, so here's a good video explaining some of the downsides of the scrolling webtoon style by Cogzy that I'll link in the description. So even if you confuse art styles between Japan and South Korea and you know nothing about the languages, you could know it's Korean by this layout. It's very unique to them, and not to mention Japanese manga is usually black and white, and manhwa is usually full color. Now the Chinese have manhwa, which sounds very similar to the Korean ones in name, but the Korean ones are spelled M-A-N-H-W-A in English, and in China it's M-A-N-H-U-A in English. And these are going increasingly online. Now, unlike English, Japanese, and Korean, Chinese isn't as simple as having one system of writing understood by everyone, since there's both traditional Chinese, which is used in Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Macau, and there's simplified Chinese, which is used in mainland China, and it just so happens that mainland China, Taiwan, and Hong Kong all have popular manhwa scenes, so just keep that in mind. Chinese manhwa is usually in full color, unlike Japanese manga, and are more in line with the traditional book-sized pages, unlike Korean manhwa. Another thing to keep in mind is that almost everything I've said are just general trends. Creators don't always follow these norms, but in general, that's how you could tell these three East Asian comic styles apart, outside of knowledge of languages or general art styles. Many other countries have their own webcomics, but I can only fit in so much in this one entry, and I would suggest looking into your own country's comic scene and webcomic scenes if you're interested in something I didn't cover. Cursed images. The term cursed image comes from a now deleted 2015 Tumblr blog, but it's backed up on the Wayback Machine that I'll show here. According to this interview of that Tumblr blogger, this is the explanation on why the blogger found it cursed. It's the perfect cursed image to me because there's nothing inherently unsettling about any part of it, she says. It's a totally mundane moment transformed into something else by the camera and the new context I've given it. The image gives off the feeling that you've accidentally walked in on some strange proto-space ritual and witnessed something that you weren't supposed to. The effect is visceral. A cocktail of dread, unease, disgust, and confusion washes over you. They're images of memories that never actually happened to you, but the moment you see them, it's suddenly happening to you. The trend would spread all over Tumblr and then move to other places like this Twitter account here or this subreddit called r/cursedimages. Apparently in 2020, making TikToks with a specific song clip from Rhythm Thief but cursed, in which they'd take a normal looking TikTok, but then the song gets played at certain points, it would cut to a cursed image at that point in the song. Apparently that whole thing became a trend on TikTok. I found a compilation of these on YouTube that I'll link in the description.
3, 2, 1, go!
There was a cursed image that got widespread in Russia, but then spread to get popular on Reddit, was Cursed Cat, or sometimes called Angry as Fuck. So take this image from 2008 of a shooting in the UK, edit the cat in it to look like this, and now it's cursed. And then it got morphed into a meme format. It's not just images that can be cursed either, but there's a whole set of cursed emojis that are used in memes. Cursed comments are another type of cursed media, but I'll show a few of them. There also became a trend to do the opposite of a cursed image called a blessed image, the usually wholesome animal photos. And there's an in-between step between blessed and cursed called blurst images. Different images that are both blessed and cursed, kind of like this. And keep in mind, it isn't just Western countries that have trends like this either. We saw that Russian creation of the cursed cat, for example. Another example would be Japanese disturbing photos, even if they themselves don't call them cursed images like we do. I'll link a good video by Sakura Stardust going over some of these. FANDOM. FANDOM was originally called WikiCities, then Wikia, then FANDOM with all caps, and now just FANDOM with only the F capitalized, but this entry kept the older all caps name. FANDOM is a wiki hosting service that is pretty much omnipresent online. If you look up a wiki for a game you like or a media property, they're most likely going to be titled insertmediahere.fandom.com, like this Dead Rising one or this Pixar one. FANDOM wikis are perhaps my least favorite places to browse because of how awful the user experience is, even if you have ad block. FANDOM itself is pretty controversial, so I'll strongly recommend watching this video from Mossbag that I'll link in the description. He could explain this better than I could. Internet challenges. Internet challenges are a very broad set of things, but typically people record themselves doing something stupid for clout, or sometimes just for fun. TikTok seems to be amplifying the amount of challenges kids do these days. There are a lot of these, and some have even caused real amounts of damage or even death. One of my favorite ones was the Stinky Meat Project, but that's a later entry, so I'll elaborate it then. Another famous one was the Tide Pod Challenge, which is also a later entry. There was also the Ice Bucket Challenge, which is also a later entry. Oh, I know, the One Chip Challenge. Wait, that's another entry later. Dang it! Considering how many are on this iceberg, I'll just leave it at this for now. This entry is just about the general idea. We'll get specific ones later. If curious, I would recommend this video from Wavy Web Surf that I'll link in the description that details some of these and the negative consequences of them. Zoom. Zoom is that video conferencing software you're most likely familiar with because of COVID shifting work and school online, and many used Zoom for this. Though where I was, we used Cisco WebEx and Microsoft Teams, but Zoom is basically the same thing. Interestingly, Zoom was founded by a former VP of Cisco WebEx, Eric Yuan, and launched the service in 2013. This is another one of those companies with deep ties to China and has been accused of censorship and privacy concerns, especially during the pandemic. Some of the things I wanted to talk about for this entry, like Zoom bombing, are later entries, so I'll just leave it at that for now. SJWs. Social justice warriors, aka SJWs, are, similarly to cancel culture, which is an entry from the last video, it's a controversial entry for some people. As with these kinds of things, I will remind you that I will explain the two main perspectives of this. Just keep in mind that I'm trying to be as honest and faithful to both sides here. I will use terms and arguments that both sides have in the most generous way I can. Do not take anything I say on either side as an endorsement of either side, nor should you take what I'm saying as me being in the middle. I'm simply expressing both sides as unbiased of a way as I can, and how they would themselves describe their views. Alright, the first point of view on this. In this side's argument, SJWs are a group of people who obsess over identity politics and political correctness to the point of absurdity. A synonym those on this side would call them, other than just SJWs, would be keyboard warrior, and their explanation would be because SJWs or keyboard warriors are typing all the time about how offended they are and how someone should take down said content, they're acting like they're actually combating this thing, hence the joke terms keyboard warrior and social justice warrior. Now, while SJW and keyboard warriors are still used to this day by those on this side, it's a bit of a dated term, not by virtue of this whole concept not being relevant, far from it in their mind, but by how the internet works. Old words become stale. You may see people on this side calling these types hyper-progressive, wokies, woke-tards, cultural Marxists, terms like that, but it all means the same thing. Though you do sometimes still see SJW. To people on this side, common terms that SJWs would say are that they are triggered by things that offend them, or a pretty common term people on this side would use to mock them was the term check your privilege, since SJWs, according to them, tend to talk a lot about certain groups being supposedly more privileged than other people based on race and gender. They would talk about this a lot, so check your privilege was a way to mock them. Now those on this side would say that SJWs believe that there is a difference between sex and gender, and that you can identify not just as male or female, but as a ton of things like this image, which would be mocked to no end by this side, spawning memes like the I identify as an attack helicopter meme, which is a later entry. But it's not just sex/gender topics, it's also race. Terms like microaggressions that cause them to be triggered is also another point of ridicule from those who are on this side. Another point on this side that they would say is that there's a lot of talk about diversity and DEI and ESG these days from SJWs, and they would say that all of this is code for race-swapping white characters in media with black and brown people, or that these people only view groups of non-whites as diverse, despite white people being a very diverse group of people themselves. Those who hold these views would say that SJWs have redefined the term racism to explicitly exclude white people, so therefore you can't be racist towards white people. To people on this side, SJWs were most associated with the website Tumblr, and when the website stopped allowing porn, many migrated to places like Twitter and Reddit en masse, and then the general user base of those sites are now way more into those things than they used to be. Those on this side would say that SJWs are the types that have infiltrated every facet of entertainment like Hollywood and video games. They've infiltrated news media, places like Wikipedia, universities, and other places like that. And finally, those on this side would say because they were able to do that, they're causing mass censorship on the internet, in media, and in countries without freedom of speech laws. Now that is the first view and the most accurate way I can portray them. I will do the same for the second view. Now, the other view of SJWs. The second view is that first and foremost, SJW is a pejorative term and shouldn't be used. They would rather be described as progressive or an ally or a feminist or things along those lines. Though some would take it as a point of pride, the term SJW, as a way to reclaim the title like this video. Those on this side would say that they see injustice in the world, especially social injustice, and they do not want to let it stand. Those on this side say that being silent is the same thing as allowing other people to be doing these social injustices, so they need to make sure to call it out whenever they see it. On the topic of sex/gender, it is viewed that society is dominated by men and made for men, while women get the short end of the stick. They would use terms like patriarchy, toxic masculinity, mansplaining, and manspreading to describe some of the ways in which women are belittled and victimized. They would also say that there's a prevalent culture in which catcalling, sexual assault, and rape are common, sometimes referred to as rape culture. They would decry things such as slut-shaming and would prefer prostitutes to be called sex workers. On gender outside of women, they would view that body dysmorphia leading to sexual reassignment surgery is not just normal but should be encouraged, and they would say that gender is a social construct so you can identify however you please. They would generally say that they consider themselves part of or an ally of the LGBT community. As for race, they would prefer to call brown and black people people of color or POCs, and that they don't have the same opportunities as white people and are victims of social and police efforts to keep them down. Those on this side tend to have alternative words for things that are viewed as problematic. For example, gypsies should be called Roma, Ebonics should be AAVE, which is African American Vernacular English, illegal aliens should be undocumented immigrants, etc. Those on this side would say that using certain terms is outdated, offensive, and should be worthy of confronting people over, since it's the only way for society to move past the old ways of doing things. They would argue that diversity, DEI, and ESG is important in media so it can represent minorities in a white-dominated society. They would say that people complaining about censorship are whiny man-babies, upset that they can't be assholes online, and they would also claim that the social right has infiltrated most of society and that most news media and such are conservative. On top of this, they would claim that the societal structure already favors those on the social right. That's the second view in the most accurate way as I can possibly portray them, just like I did for the first. I hope I've done my part to explain how both sides view each other on the internet in the most generous way I possibly could. Let's move on, please. Trolling. Trolling, like shitposting, is something we all know when we see it, or at least we think we do, but it's hard to describe in words. I'll just use the Merriam-Webster's definitions for this. To antagonize others online by deliberately posting inflammatory, irrelevant, or offensive comments or other disruptive content, and to harass, criticize, or antagonize someone, especially by provocatively disparaging or mocking public statements, postings, or acts. While it's said that trolling, the term, has been used earlier than this, the earliest documented uses of the term was in 1992 in Usenet discussions in alt.folklore.urban. In August 1997, the webcomic Kevin and Kel used it as shown here, and is honestly a great illustration as to what a troll is. There's obviously way more to this, but let's skip ahead. The 14th rule of the internet is, do not argue with trolls, it means they win. A common phrase you might have seen is don't feed the trolls, which means interacting with trolls just emboldens them to keep trolling, so ignoring them is how to get the troll to go away. One of the earlier depictions of what an online troll looked like were these kinds of images, as I'll show here. Then came the iconic troll face, or as it was originally called, cool face, but this is an entry for later, so I'll save it for now. Trolling can come in many forms, and there are many related terms to trolling, like the term flaming, which was defined in this 1983 book as to speak rapidly and incessantly on an uninteresting topic or with a patently ridiculous attitude. A 2004 definition on Urban Dictionary says it's an online argument that becomes nasty or derisive, where insulting a party to the discussion takes precedence over the objective merits of one side or another. A similar term is flame war, which is flaming on a large enough scale to cause a shitstorm of anger from every which way. Griefing could be considered a type of trolling in which you or a team of people act in certain ways in an online game meant to piss off others, often making it into grief compilations on YouTube. Know Your Meme has a decent list of the various forms of griefing. Raiding is another term we could talk about, but that's an entry for later, so I'll save it. Bait and switch is another term related to trolling. While it is often used to describe a bad practice in advertising, it can also describe the phenomenon in which someone links something to someone saying it's one thing, but it leads to somewhere else, or the video is one thing, but it turns out not to be. Examples of this include rickrolling, which is a later entry, or much more unwelcome things like screamers, which is an entry for later, goatsy, which is an entry for later, or other such gross things, or even stuff like gore. Bait and switch doesn't even need to be from links or videos. It can be from things like green text stories, which is an entry for later, in which the poster starts describing a real sounding story but gets silly like this, and it turns into a reference into mom's spaghetti, or another common one was everybody walked the dinosaur. Another common form of trolling is pretending to give advice to a clueless person, and if they follow it, it harms them. For example, telling them to delete System 32, which is an entry for later, or telling them to do Alt plus F4, which is an entry for later. There are some really interesting ones as described by Internet Historian in this video that I'll link in the description, but some are actually dangerous for your health and could lead to injury or death. This video by Chilling Scares is a pretty notorious one, as the fourth thread discussed at about 13.5 minutes in, about a spoon and duct tape experiment that could lead to people getting injured or dying that I'll link in the description. Or this video from the same channel whose first entry discusses a DIY crystal making process that spread all over the internet but doesn't actually make crystals. It's actually very dangerous for you, that I'll link in the description. Concern trolling is another one you may have heard about, in which a troll pretends to share the views of a certain group while actually holding an opposite view. The purpose of this is to cause people who earnestly agree with said view that the troll's pretending to have to engage with it in earnest, and then the troll may start attempting to get the group to do something with the trust they just got. The ultimate goal of this is to discredit the group or distract them from other things. In other words, concerned trolling is pretending to be like a certain group to harm whatever that group's goals are. And with how political the internet has gotten, this one is a particularly popular one. Snipe hunting is another form of trolling in which you get gullible people or just new people to look for something that doesn't exist, like telling them to download more RAM or confusing a clerk by asking them, hey, could we pre-order Battletoads, which that's an entry for later. Popular one on 4chan back in the day was telling people you need to download 4chan Gold to see certain posts or threads or boards when no such thing existed. I bring this one up because it's hilarious that while this was a legitimate troll back then, this ended up actually aging like milk, because after said trend, 4chan would introduce the 4chan Pass, which is a yearly fee you can pay to bypass CAPTCHAs and have a quicker post cooldown period, and it even features a board called Very Important Posts or VIP that requires a 4chan Pass to access, so therefore 4chan Gold really does exist these days, in a certain way, which is really funny. Another common form of trolling is noob trolling, in which you, an experienced user, plays dumb and does things that someone new would call out, not realizing that only somebody new would call this out, which thus would expose them for being new. Another form would be intentionally using wrong spelling or grammar to get a grammar Nazi mad, which is something similar to that. There are also times when trolling can be widespread enough to become what some would call a trolling campaign that could lead to more than just some laughs and lead to harassment of certain people, but some of these are mentioned later in the iceberg. There are also paid trolls from governments and companies who do it for a corporate or propaganda purpose in a troll farm, instead of doing it for sport, which is what most trolls did back in the day. These days there's a worrying trend of people losing touch of what a troll actually is, and often just calls anybody with a different view from them a troll, thus diluting the term's meaning. With a topic as wide-reaching and varied as trolling, I could be here all day, but I do need to end this at some point, so let's move on. Bitcoin/cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency, or crypto for short, is a digital currency meant to not be controlled by a central authority like a government or a bank or a company. There are many different kinds of cryptocurrencies, usually called insert something here, coin, but some don't call themselves that. The ones with fewer fluctuations in price and have a history of not just crashing or rug pulling are called stable coins. Some of these stable coins peg themselves to a fiat currency like the US dollar, others use other cryptocurrencies as collateral, some are tied to a commodity like gold, and others are tied to some kind of algorithm. Where there are stable coins, there are also shit coins or sometimes meme coins. This is what we call crypto with basically no value, and sometimes they're based off of memes like Dogecoin that we discussed in the last video, or sometimes it's based on a celebrity, something like that. While some crypto succeed as a digital currency to an extent, as you may sometimes see an option to pay with one of them on some websites or even some stores, you mostly see it used for these three things. The first is a less regulated stock market in which you profit on the value going up, like a stock, and you hope to buy the dip and sell high. The second main use you see for it are illegal transactions on the dark web black markets like the now defunct Silk Road, which is an entry for later. The third main use of it is as a method of donation when a website can't take credit cards or PayPal, like when this infamously happened to WikiLeaks in 2010, but there's an entry on WikiLeaks later. Sadly, there are a lot of scams that are prevalent in the world of a hardly regulated cryptocurrency, with rug pulls/exit scams being very common in this space. Two common ways for this to happen is when somebody starts a new coin and hoards most of it, then gets people hyped with influencers, or maybe they themselves are an influencer, and then when the price peaks, sell all that they have, causing the value to tank.
So the market cap is $2.168 trillion. And now the market... Oh! It went to zero!
The creator/influencer make bank off of it, while the average Joe lost a lot of money. The other common way to exit scams is when sites, frequently dark websites and or sellers on those sites, start off by building a strong reputation just to later on stop fulfilling orders and then pocketing the money. the seller ghosts everyone and exits quietly, or the platform stops you from withdrawing your money while pocketing it themselves. What recourse are you gonna have? You were more than likely buying illegal things on the dark web, so they got away scot-free. The other major selling point for crypto is the anonymity it provides, or at least that was what many believe. In reality, it's better described as pseudo-anonymous. If you want an in-depth explanation on how crypto works, you can see this video from 3 Blue 1 Brown explaining it that I'll link in the description. But essentially, each cryptocurrency coin is provided by the blockchain, which is publicly recorded. And sure, it doesn't say John Smith paid $5 for chicken nuggets at Albertsons at 232 Alton Drive on April 3rd, 2026 with his Chase credit card, but it will say the transaction that you made, even if it doesn't show your name. And since crypto is never really used as currency as often as many would like, you need to, at some point, cash out into your local currency with a cryptocurrency exchange. These exchanges are often required to collect personal info on you, and not to mention 99% of people don't get their wage in crypto, so they also need to use a regular payment method to even buy these things, which is another chink in the anonymity. So essentially, when you're first buying in, you're buying in with your own personal payment method, and then when you are actually using a transaction that's public information, even if your name's not shown, you'll eventually have to use a cryptocurrency exchange, which does have all of your information, which means the government could easily track your transactions using crypto. There are ways to anonymize this, like with the use of tumbling for a fee. It works kind of like money laundering, just instead of trying to make dirty cash clean, you're trying to make your identifiable crypto less identifiable. One other note on crypto in general is that industry has been lobbying hard in the political sphere in the US on both sides of the aisle. I mean, just look at how much was spent in 2024 alone. And for the upcoming 2026 midterms, they've already spent almost $300 million in lobbying. The purpose is pretty obvious. Don't regulate our industry and only pass laws that we approve of, and we'll pay you fat stacks of cash for your election funds. Now for Bitcoin, it was created in January 2009 as the very first crypto, and the developer is a mysterious person who calls himself Satoshi Nakamoto. There's an entry on this person later, but just know that finding this person's actual identity is a real rabbit hole. Now Bitcoin is easily the most famous cryptocurrency and usually the most valuable one, so if you're paying for anything with a cryptocurrency, Bitcoin will be the most likely one it will accept. Bitcoin's legality varies across the world, but quite interestingly, it was not only legal in El Salvador, but it became an official currency in 2021, but this status was revoked in 2025. Apparently, it wasn't used very often, with something like only 8% of people using it, and the service meant to facilitate the transactions, the Chivo wallet, was often facing technical difficulties and was even hacked in 2024. While this happens in other cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin is also widely known for people mining for it. To quote Investopedia, Bitcoin mining is the process by which transactions are officially entered on the blockchain and new Bitcoins are launched into circulation. Miners use computers to find a cryptographic number that meets the Bitcoin network's difficulty rules. The first miner to find a solution to the problem receives Bitcoin as a reward, and then the process begins again. Bitcoin mining requires significant time and capital investment, and due to high competition, profit is not guaranteed. Since Bitcoin can be worth a lot of money, some people set up Bitcoin mining farms with nothing but rows upon rows of systems whose only purpose is to mine for Bitcoin. Some look professional, like this video of a guy who vlogged himself visiting a Bitcoin mining facility, link is in the description, whereas others look like they're held together with duct tape in a dream, like these ones here. It is notable how much of a fire hazard these things are. For example, this is the fate of the previous mining farm we looked at. Sometimes people don't feel like going through all that effort and will instead turn other people's computers into Bitcoin miners without their consent by embedding them secretly in programs. This is called cryptojacking. One final thing I'll talk about with Bitcoin is that it's a go-to example of something most people wish they got in early on. Bitcoin was easy to get in its first few years and worth a boatload now. To illustrate just how valuable it is now compared to a long time ago, I'll give you guys a couple examples of some heartbreaking incidents that, if gone differently, could have caused these guys to be extremely rich. The most famous example is a guy, Laszlo, who, on May 22, 2010, spent 10,000 Bitcoin to buy 2 pizzas from Papa John's in Florida. While the price fluctuates on Bitcoin, that would have been worth hundreds of millions of dollars, or heck, even over $1 billion these days. The crypto community calls May 22nd Bitcoin Pizza Day just because of this.
Is it true some people celebrate the anniversary of the day you bought the pizza?
Yeah, May 22nd, Bitcoin Pizza Day. So
it's called Bitcoin Pizza Day?
It is.
Raise your pizza. Raise your pizza. Raise your pizza. Toast to the one and only Laszlo. Thanks for being here and coming, and thanks for inspiring International Bitcoin Pizza Day. This is awesome. Cheers to you.
That's kind of cool though, that around the world, people who know about it celebrate what you did, May 22nd.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool to kind of have a holiday in my honor.
I'm going to mark it down on my calendar.
Another famous case was of a Welsh man named James Howells who, in 2013, accidentally threw away his laptop hard drive containing the private key for 8,000 Bitcoin, or about $800 million at its peak. But unlike the Bitcoin Pizza case, this one doesn't just end at that. He went on to try everything possible to get it back. He tried getting permission to search the landfill, he sued the local government, he announced in 2025 that he may even be trying to purchase a part of the landfill. Honestly, this case is really fascinating with tons of more and more ludicrous ways this man has tried to get this back. But hey, it's not like any of us have lost $800 million, so I have no idea how I would react to it and what ridiculous ways I would try to get it back. There's a lot more one could say about Bitcoin or cryptocurrency in general, but that should be enough for now. Let's move on. Verified accounts. A verified account is an account on social media or elsewhere like YouTube, in which the website offers verification services for people or companies. You typically see something like a check mark or a badge next to the name to signify to anyone interacting with said user that they are who you think they are. There's many different ways sites do this, like uploading identity documents, which is how Facebook does it. It could be biometric, like fingerprints or facial recognition. It could even be stuff like bank verification or address verification. YouTube does this when you apply for AdSense, in which they mail you a pin in the physical mail to verify that you are at the location you say you are, but since I'm not monetized yet, I only know this from looking it up. Probably the most notable thing here is that since I can remember, people have said that those with blue check marks on Twitter have some of the most annoying and awful takes imaginable, but I'm pretty new to Twitter, so don't quote me on how true that is. And speaking of, the last thing I'll mention here, Twitter pretty infamously changed the verification process to be a simple subscription you pay for and offers no verification at all, which leads to tweets like this being taken seriously by some people, like this, or this. Bots. A bot is simply an application that runs scripts online, which can be used for normal things like automod on Reddit or automating mundane tasks in an MMO, but can also be used for nefarious things like having a ton of them making posts on social media to push a message, for example. There are others like view bots to artificially raise view counts on YouTube, there's spam bots, there's botnets, there's ones that help you DDoS a website, etc. According to this kind of old article, 94.2% of websites experience a bot attack. Ironically, verified accounts are supposed to be a way to combat bots impersonating people, but now even that's not something we can be sure of on Twitter, as we saw. One way to combat bots posting or flooding a site is with the use of CAPTCHAs, which is an entry for later. That should be enough about bots, let's move on. Influencers. Influencers can be defined by Merriam-Webster as a person who inspires or guides the actions of others often, specifically a person who is able to generate interest in something such as a consumer product by posting about it on social media. If I had to put this in layman's terms, I would think of an Instagram user who has a high enough following to get free stuff from a business, but at the same time hyping the product/company up to their audience. The business hopes to get more publicity and thus more customers. While I say influencers are often on Instagram, there are plenty of other sites with influencers. If you're not a fan of influencers, you may often think of them as annoying clout chasers who are friendly on camera, but narcissists and prima donnas in real life. But if you are a fan of influencers, or at least a specific one, you'll tend to think of them as charismatic creators who are fun to watch, who you trust with product reviews, and you're interested in their personal goings-on. Regardless of your view on influencers, there are a lot of them these days, and I can only see their numbers increasing. Vocaloid. Developed and joint by Yamaha Corporation and the Music Technology Group at Pompeu Fabra University, Barcelona, a voice synthesizer program called Vocaloid was released in 2004. What the heck does that mean? Well, the details are kinda complicated, but just know that the company took voice samples of some people. These collections of voice samples are called voice banks, and in the program you could make the lyrics and melodies and the software sings them back. While the very first original release of Vocaloid didn't work exactly like this is how it's worked since the second version beginning in 2007. In any case, Vocaloid software is packaged not just as software, but the voice bank itself is represented by a character name, and it's typically a moified girl or boy, and you just call the characters Vocaloids. They are often marketed as virtual idols and are very popular in Japan. More on that in just a moment. Here's a bit of early weirdness. Did you know that the first Vocaloids weren't actually Japanese, but were instead English language ones, Leon, Lola, and Miriam, whose interfaces were also only in English? The first Japanese Vocaloid was released in November 2004, named Meiko. I'm not going to list every Vocaloid here, but I'll mention the important ones. In 2006, a Japanese male Vocaloid named Kaito was made. Now both Meiko and Kaito were made by Yamaha, but distributed through Krypton Future Media Inc. That company would start to make their own Vocaloids after this. In August 2007, the one you know, the really big and most important one, was released called Hatsune Miku. In December of the same year, Kagamine Rin and Ren were released. The final one I'll mention is Megurine Ruka, that was released in 2009. Now the ones I mentioned are the big impactful ones that get shown at events and your average fan of Vocaloids know. One other thing to note, the Vocaloid software has been updated over time into 6 major releases, the 6th and most recent one in 2022, and it's the version currently being maintained. Interestingly, each Vocaloid also has different versions that are used in different kinds of music. For example, Hatsune Miku has all of these different versions as you can see here, including English and Chinese versions in which a voice is more tuned to sing in those languages. These things got extremely popular in Japan, both by their designs being eye-catching, but also by a lot of indie music creators in Japan using the software and uploading their songs on the Japanese equivalent to YouTube called Nico Nico Doga. But then people in the English-speaking world would re-upload these songs on YouTube, which caused it to explode on the English-speaking side too. This led to Westerners making their own songs with Vocaloid software as well, which is pretty neat. And if you stop and think about this for a moment, we're kind of in a funny situation. Vocaloid was a product originally meant for English speakers, but went nowhere. Then it released in Japan, and then got majorly popular. And because it got popular in Japan, the English language market became fans of it, and specifically the Japanese ones. We didn't want the ones made for us, and instead wanted the ones made for Japan, which is kind of a weird situation, but I find it hilarious. Anyway, you might be curious about popular examples of Vocaloid music, but there's somebody on YouTube who ranks the most popular ones on YouTube by views. I'll just link one of their videos in the description if you want an idea of what the most popular ones are. I will mention some of my favorite ones though. News39, which uses Hatsune Miku. Mimukawa Nice Try, using Hatsune Miku. and Zako, which uses a Vocaloid I didn't mention named Kaiyuki. All three are linked in the description. Another major thing to note about Vocaloids, you see, Vocaloid is a specific brand instead of products. Not all voice banks are Vocaloids. For example, a popular voice bank that's not a Vocaloid is Kasane Teto, who also blew up at around the time Vocaloid did in the West. There is a subculture of people whose career is primarily covering Vocaloid songs with their own voice called Utaite, and they mostly post on NND, which is Nico Nico Doga, but also on YouTube. I mentioned earlier that Vocaloids are marketed as virtual idols, and this is often not shown just in marketing materials, but also full-blown concerts complete with holograms on stage. One you might have heard of is called Miku Expo, in which Hatsune Miku sings fan-made songs alongside the other big Vocaloids I mentioned earlier. One of my friends is actually a big Miku fan, and he's dragged me to 2 of these. Now while these 2 are all worldwide, they come to the US every 2 years or so, ignoring the COVID years of course. One could say Vocaloid's ability to become virtual idols has directly inspired modern VTuber culture and agencies like Hololive. VTubers, particularly early ones, owe a lot of their history to Vocaloids, paving the way with not just virtual concerts, but Vocaloid songs are also some of the most popular kinds of songs VTubers cover. And artists who made their career off of making Vocaloid music often ended up working on VTuber original songs. For example, miHoYo Hachima, her most popular song, Red Heart, was written by Kotono House, who remixed Vocaloid songs in the past. And Hachima's most popular cover was of Echo, which was originally from the Vocaloid Gumi, which was another Vocaloid I hadn't mentioned earlier, and in fact it was Gumi's English version too, which is kinda neat. Anyway, it's not just idol stuff that Vocaloids like Miku are known for. They've been featured in a ton of video games like Hatsune Miku, Project Diva, and there was even a movie released in 2025 called Colorful Stage, the Movie, a Miku who can't sing. Vocaloids are a major part of internet culture in both Japan and the West, and it's nice to be able to talk about them here, but let's go to the next entry. Cat popularity. Instead of giving you a long history lesson about cats, let's keep this one fun. Cats on the internet have never not been beloved. Everywhere you look, you'll see a cute cat video with millions of views, and some are so iconic that they become memes or get entire channels based off of them. I'm not going to be listing every single cat meme or every single channel based on cats, but here's a sample of popular cat things on the internet. I mentioned this one in the 4chan entry, but there's Lolcats, which is a later entry. There's the I Can Has Cheeseburger cat, which was a lolcat that ascended into its own meme and even has a website named after it, but that's an entry for later. If you remember the earlier entry about cursed images, there was also the cursed cat. There's Neon Cat, which is also a later entry. There's Keyboard Cat, which is another entry later. There's this drawing of a cat called Pusheen that's really popular. It even had an Among Us collab. I remember when I first got into Among Us back in 2025, I remember seeing this Pusheen set of costumes everywhere, so that's just kind of neat. There's Bongo Cat, which is another entry for later. I think my favorite out of all of these I'm listing is this Vibing Cat here that's also pretty popular, which, I don't know, I like this cat's groove. There's the Bonsai Kitten hoax, which is another entry for later. There's Grumpy Cat, which is also an entry for later. There's Long Cat, which I actually remember seeing all the time a while ago on the internet. Sometimes on 4chan you would see someone post this cat into thirds to where the top part would be posted in one image, then the middle part in a second image, and then the bottom part in the third image, and the goal was to try to make all 3 posts sequentially so you can make Long Cat without getting interrupted. There's this Japanese YouTube channel that had a cat named Maru, whose antics with boxes got millions of views all the time, which I'll link in the description. If this sampling doesn't show you how popular cats are on the internet, I don't know what does. And if somebody said the internet was for 2 main things, porn and cat videos, I wouldn't say that they're all that wrong. Clout Chasers. I kind of already alluded to what these are in the influencers entry, but essentially, a clout chaser is someone who wants to become famous no matter how desperate they act to get it. They will beg famous people for collabs or just to get general attention from them. They will do stupid things in public to get views, since even bad publicity is still publicity. If I were to distinguish between them and regular influencers, I'll use this scenario. Let's say one influencer and one clout chaser go to Tokyo. The influencer will go to the best places possible for them and show off the best parts of their time. They may occasionally be rude and not follow customs, but will overall be normal. The clout chaser will film themselves throwing a fish on someone's car.
Honestly, bro, I'm done with these fish.
Film someone throwing Pokeballs at random people.
Toyota, I choose you. No, 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 no. Yes. Catch him. Catch him. No. Now you'll never catch them all. Boss, watch this. Ah! Gotcha, bitch. He's gonna catch you. Okay, get him. Honey, get him. Oh, you've been caught! In the movies, in the shows, it's different. You would throw the ball and they'd like get caught by it, like they go inside of it. I think this is defective Pokeball. Charizard? Wait, is that? I'm gonna catch you. I choose you.
Or film themselves at the suicide forest and find a body, and then post it on the internet for clout.
Hey, I really hate to say this. I think there's someone hanging right there. I'm not even f***ing kidding. Do you see it? I'm not even, this isn't a f***ing joke, guys! 100 yards away from the parking lot.
I don't feel very good.
Yeah, I don't feel good. What, you never stand next to a dead guy?
No.
I just
God damn it.
Crazy,
like
bro.
we joke about seeing things in here and like
it was gonna be a joke.
Yeah.
This was all gonna be a joke. Why did it become so real?
And no matter how bad it makes them or their country look, the clout is worth it to them. And only when they suffer from extreme backlash, I mean extreme backlash, would they ever consider throwing out an apology for their severe and continuous lapse in judgment. Malware/viruses. If I'm going to be honest, most people use malware and viruses interchangeably, even if that's not really correct, and I don't really think anybody would care all that much if you made this mistake, except the most computer savvy and cybersecurity savvy people, but I'll at least explain what the differences are at least. To quote Wikipedia, malware, a portmanteau of malicious and software, is any software intentionally designed to cause disruption to a computer, server, client, or computer network, leak private information, gain unauthorized access to information or systems, deprive access to information, or interfere with the user's computer security and privacy without their knowledge. As for viruses, a computer virus is a type of malware that, when executed, replicates itself by modifying other computer programs and inserting its own code into those programs. If this replication succeeds, the affected areas are then said to be infected with a computer virus, a metaphor derived from biological viruses. So in other words, a virus is a subset of malware that infects programs and spreads, and malware is a more vast collection of harmful software that can harm any kind of computer or get access to private information. Particularly notorious kind of malware is called a ransomware, in which an infected system will be locked, display a message that tells you that your computer will be held hostage until you pay a ransom, typically in crypto but not always, and if you don't, it will delete your files and or kill your computer. A particularly infamous ransomware was called WannaCry, but that's an entry for later. In the modern day, stealing login information, getting credit card/debit card details, stealing private info to sell to others, international espionage, and cryptojacking that we discussed before are the main reasons why malware is made. Now, with the exception of cryptojacking, all of these things have always existed in the land of malware, but it used to be a bit different back in the day. These days, malware wants to be hidden, and any virus infection wants to be hidden to do those things I already mentioned. But again, this really wasn't always the case. It used to be much more common for viruses to spread on your computer and cause a specific bombastic thing to happen called a payload just for the lulz or to brick your computer. It used to be more because virus creators were bored or wanted to spread some kind of message, but not really for financial reasons, although sometimes it was. There's a really good channel called Danowact1 who documented a lot of the older viruses that had these types of purposes, and I want to show a sample from his videos of these old kinds, but also there's going to be a flashing lights warning. Please skip ahead if you want to avoid fast flashing lights. And links to these videos will be in the description below.
Control and Alt and F4 at times will... There we go. I thought we tried to close it, so it spawned many more windows. Hitting Control and Alt Delete sometimes pops up a window. There we go. You are an idiot, as it tries to prevent you from closing them. And as you try to close, just go ahead and run this. And it takes no time at all to tell us, warning, your system have been encrypted by Rensa. Let's get it. We gotta get our 0.2 billion points so our files are okay. If we don't, we're screwed. Because we got some really important stuff on... Oh no, we died. And eventually, it'll hit on the random requirement that Suicide requires to display its payload. And there you go. Works. Here we go. And the computer should blue screen. Yes, it has. And as soon as this is finished, we get this nice flashing badass skull. It says press any key. Something's telling me that wasn't a real check disk, so we're gonna press enter.
Despite how cool these things look, don't go out of your way to install any of these. Not only are they old and won't work on your system, but you don't want to take any unnecessary risks. In any case, viruses and malware do not act like these fun ones anymore, so hiding it is better for what they want to do. If you want to combat getting malware, the first and foremost important step is to develop common sense when you browse the internet. You should be using AdBlock as a default, no matter where you browse, and I would recommend uBlock. Not sponsored by them, but I think uBlock's a really good program. As many malicious things come from online ads and pop-ups. Well, if my videos get monetized in the future, maybe you can make an exception and disable the ad blockers when watching me. Wink wink, nudge nudge. But anyway, building common sense while browsing the internet involves other things too, like learning where the proper download button on each website is, because sometimes there are multiple ones and most of them are actually fake, trying to lure you into a click to take you off of the website and get something malicious on your computer. You should start making sure to properly check who sent you an email before clicking on any attachments, and honestly, I'd be extremely cautious even if someone you know might have sent you something, because their account could have been compromised and someone else sent it with their email address. Various bits of knowledge like that will help you build common sense when browsing the internet, because common sense will stop 95% of malware from getting on your computer. But for the other 5% or so, you may want to consider Malwarebytes. This is not sponsored by them either, though I would take one if they would offer it, as I actually like their product and I've been using it for something like 15 years. Anyway, Malwarebytes has a free option that lets you scan for malware, which includes viruses, on your computer. You should do at least one monthly full computer scan, and if you pay for a subscription, you can have real-time protection, which may be more useful for less experienced users or those who find themselves with high risks of getting malware. That, combined with making sure your Windows security application built into Windows is on, you'll usually be fine, as long as you also have some common sense. So to summarize my advice, make sure your Windows security application built into Windows is on, make sure you have something like Malwarebytes to scan at least monthly, and maybe have real-time protection if you think you need it. When you're browsing the internet, make sure you have ad block on, and finally, make sure to utilize common sense, as that'll save you 95% of the time. And no, you are not safe from viruses and malware just because you're on Mac or Linux, as they do have malware. It's just that most people use Windows computers, so most malware is targeted at Windows users. And no, phones and tablets are not immune either. Everybody should make sure to stay safe when using their devices. Google Maps/Google Earth. Google Maps is perhaps one of the most useful apps you can have on your phone, or one of the most important websites you can have bookmarked on your computer. I'm an Android user, so if you're on iOS, you can still get it, but you have Apple Maps built in, though the general consensus is that Google Maps is better than Apple Maps, but Apple Maps I think is still fine. Anyway, Google Maps is a web mapping service that has mapped a considerable portion of the world's roads, paved or dirt, all around the world. While on the app or website, you can see a map of your area that you can zoom in and out of, but you can also see a street view of it. Now, the way Google did this street view was with the use of Google cars that I'll show here that look like this. Now, Street View is extremely useful since sometimes I'm going to a hyper-specific place that's a small part of a building that isn't really seen on a map or something like that, but if I go to a Street View, I can see which part of the building I should enter in. Now, the common use for Google Maps is the GPS service you put in your car or bike or even when walking. I like how it shows the different times it would take to get somewhere by each of these, plus public transit times too. It displays the speed limits of where you are, when users report a speed trap in your area, and heck, even the weather. Sometimes there's even views of things not on streets, like the Great Barrier Reef in 3D, or the International Space Station, etc. Google Maps having such high functionality is actually what convinced me to finally switch to a smartphone. Yeah, I was the kind of guy who was a holdout with my dumb phone since I didn't think I needed anything that a smartphone offered. It was 2015 that I finally caved and decided that having a GPS would be worth having on me. Now that's Google Maps, but what about Google Earth, the other entry here? Despite being separate programs, Google Earth is honestly quite similar to Google Maps, but instead of mapping things for you to visit like a GPS, it uses satellite imagery to render a virtual globe of the Earth that you can zoom in and pretty far. According to Google in this 2019 article, Google Earth covers 98% of places in the world that people live at 36 million square miles. That's pretty nuts. What a time to be alive, huh? If I had to describe how people would use Google Earth differently than Google Maps, it would be that Google Maps are to find where you want to go, what businesses are around, and a lot of details to help you plan a trip. But Google Earth is if you want an initial look at an area to plan something, maybe scientific, maybe architectural, or honestly, you're just a freaking nerd who loves stuff like this. That kind of person who browses random Wikipedia articles when bored. That type of person. My grandfather, who's an architect, uses Google Earth at least at some points in his work. I know this because every time I help him upgrade computers, I have to install Google Earth for him, among a lot of other things. Another really interesting thing about Google Maps and Google Earth is that you can actually find a lot of interesting things by just going on Street View on Google Maps or just zooming in on Google Earth. Because there's so many interesting things on these things, someone should really make an iceberg about this. Oh wait, people have. If you're curious about the interesting things that can be found on Google Maps and Google Earth, I'd recommend watching these two videos from Parallel Pipes, who is honestly one of my favorite YouTube channels. He's uploaded a couple videos that cover lots of interesting phenomenon on Google Earth and Google Maps. Both are linked in the description. Google Play Store. Originally called Android Market in 2008, but then called Google Play since 2012, Google Play is a storefront that you use on Android machines. It's your default app store, essentially. Just go on, search for an app, and then download and install it. They also do sell other things like TV shows, movies, books, music, etc. Now, while the term Google Play and Google Play Store can be used interchangeably, there were some other apps with Google Play branding. For example, Google Play Music used to be an app in which you could stream music and podcasts, but that was shut down in 2020 with YouTube Music taking over. But this entry is specifically talking about the Google Play Store. Now, unlike Apple with their store, Google actually does not require that Android apps be downloaded from the Google Play Store. You're free to get apps from wherever. But that doesn't mean Google was all sunshine and rainbows about it. In 2023, Google settled a lawsuit for $700 million over its anti-competitive behavior in the US. Now this is the kind of money government should be pushing companies to pay. $700 million would make even the biggest companies feel pain, unlike that pathetic $20 million for miHoYo over Genshin Impact as discussed earlier. Anyway, according to this article here, when paying for an app in the Google Play Store, Google would charge up to 30% extra. The state argued that these absurdly high fees was because of Google cornering the market on Android. So Google has promised to make it easier for people to download apps outside of the Google Play Store, and they also promised to allow for other options to pay for apps. You used to only be able to pay through Google, but they said they would begin to let you pay through other apps, so that's good. I personally don't have any apps that I pay for, so I generally just go through the Google Play Store, as I imagine most people do as well, but it's neat to be able to have the option to do other places if you want. Corporate Memphis. Corporate Memphis, or Allegria art, refers to a very specific art style that you're most definitely aware of. Kind of like CalArts is shown here, which is seemingly everywhere in Western media these days. Corporate Memphis, as shown here, is instead the art style of Google and other such Western companies that they seem to love to plaster in marketing material and their websites. It features flat, vector-based drawings with distorted, noodly people with small heads and large limbs, and their skin color, while it can be normal skin colors, but it's often various colors that are not real skin colors. If I'm going to be completely honest for a moment, I don't really want to spend much time on this, since this art style looks so damn ugly. Had CalArts not already been a thing, I would have said no other art style disgusts me so much on a primal level. It's like a company is strapping a funnel to my mouth and feeding me industrial-grade slop every time I see these putrid things. I hate it, I hate it, I hate it. Let's move on. That may have just gotten a PTSD level of reaction from somebody in my audience. This sound right here is the previous generation's Discord ping in terms of how ingrained the sound is. Sadly, you will never hear it again, naturally, because the program it was used for, Skype, shut down in 2025. But let's back up a bit and talk about Skype when it was first around. Created as a startup in 2003 by a few people, then bought by eBay in 2005, and then after a couple purchases it was bought by Microsoft and was owned by them until the 2025 shutdown. As for what it did, without going into the nitty-gritty of the back end, it was a platform in which you could text, call, and video call people. There were Skype groups that you could have as a group chat and even make calls in front of a lot of people. While stuff like Microsoft Teams, Cisco WebEx, and Zoom that I've covered before has made video calling to a group of people not seem all that impressive these days, and heck, every smartphone can video call natively these days. But at the time Skype released, this was novel to most people and felt really high-tech. This was years before smartphone, remember. I remember myself seeing video calls people would have in sci-fi media when I was a kid, and I thought that kind of thing would never happen, at least in my lifetime. I thought it was just a, sci-fi thing. But when Skype was making the rounds, I was shocked such a thing could exist. It was amazing. But while it may have been amazing at the time, the competition that did Skype's functions just as well, if not better, led to them losing market share. And when Microsoft canned it in 2025, they already had Microsoft Teams that people could use anyway. What a sad fate for a legendary product. Gmail. Gmail is Google's email service and is one of the most popular ones out there. There are some other ones worth noting like Outlook/Hotmail, Apple Mail, and Yahoo. But Outlook is used mostly by businesses and schools, and they make their employees and students use those, which can be pretty useful. Apple Mail is just built into Apple products. Yahoo and Hotmail are practically only for people who had emails before Gmail existed and they haven't made an effort to switch. Heck, Yahoo was the first email I ever had before I switched to Gmail myself. So all of this is to say, Gmail is the email service. If a user has an active choice in which email service they would use and there isn't one assigned to them or a default one built into their device, they'll choose Gmail most of the time. How do I know this? I just do. Everybody here knows what an email is, so I won't describe things like that too much, but there is a feature of Gmail that I do like that I want to mention. If you exceed the size limit on an attachment of 25 megabytes, it'll give you an option to automatically upload it to Google Drive and then includes that link to the Google Drive in the email for you. I just think that type of ease of use thing is really cool. Now, I've used various email providers over time, but Google's default spam filter is easily the best I've experienced right out of the box. Though I do want to note that this scanning of emails for spam is also used to collect data and serve you personalized ads. This may be surprising to some people that Google is using the content of your private emails to collect data on you, but they do, and they've been sued multiple times over this. In a pretty funny move from Microsoft in 2013, they started an advertising campaign against Google saying you're getting scroogled, you get it there, and explaining the situation and telling you to try Outlook. Now, Google did end up updating their terms of service in 2014 to mention this fact more explicitly, but to most people, that's not nearly enough, and there should be an expectation of emails being more private than Google lets it. But despite this negativity, I use Gmail, many of you use Gmail, and it's a useful email client to most people who have it. That's going to be the last entry of this video. Thank you so much for watching, and if you'd like to support the channel, please consider contributing to my Buy Me a Coffee page. Link is in the description, and I will give you a shout out at the next video if you end up contributing. And you can follow me on Twitter at DeepDiveOtaku, linked in the description. And if you liked the video, please make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to be alerted of future parts. There's going to be a lot of parts, so you're going to want to make sure you're subscribed and hit the bell button so you know when the next one's coming out. God bless, and have a great rest of your day.